All right, beloveds, we're going to shift gears just a little bit. Listen, this I don't want this channel to be all about reacting to Donald Trump. I love I want this channel to also give you uh, the tools and information to be able to demand what we need to see happen from Democrats. Like, we can listen, we get it. Everybody pissed off. It's all the shit going on. It's not fun. It's not. And it's easy to just get in them, get stay in a state of reacting. But we also have to be prepared for the world ahead, because we know that Donald Trump, this administration, is not going to last. I'm very confident. I'm very cautiously so. Well, I'll say that I'm cautiously optimistic about uh, how we get rid of these this the current administration and what it's doing, and even get rid of the oligarchs that are hell bent on driving, you know what I mean, our way of living into the ground for their own ends. So yes, all that is true, but what also is true is we can't just vote Democrats in. We have to give Democrats a mandate. We have to make sure that they know what our priorities are. We have to make sure that they understand that housing affordability is a priority. We have to make sure that they understand that those promises they made to the coal miners in West Virginia, to, oh, you don't have to, we're going to shut down the coal mines, but we're going to reskill you. Reskill them into what? What will that look like? And we have to hold their feet to the fire to ensure these priorities are achieved if we're going to see real change. What Mom Donnie is doing in New York, amazing. He is doing the damn thing. I'm very excited about it. And even, in other cities in small ways are meeting the moment. Here in the city of Philadelphia, our mayor, Cheryl Parker, she is creating a pipeline for infrastructure investment. We have shipbuilding coming back to Philadelphia. We just opened up a new our cruise port with Norwegian Cruise Lines after over 15 years of not having any cruising out of Philadelphia. So the world is still moving, and we are being left behind. If we would make sure that our politicians are not only focused on social issues, which are important, but also focusing on investing into we the people. Because guess what? If we would do what I want to share with you tonight, infrastructure, that's a big thing. Infrastructure impacts housing, folks. It impacts housing, it impacts housing access and affordability. Infrastructure is a big deal. And the United States of America, as it stands, is woefully behind the mark when it comes to infrastructure. We're going to go to breaking points, and they had this professor on who I love to listen to, and he gets he puts in perspective the reality of the fact we are behind. We are really behind.
Not seas of bicycles. And these are electric vehicles you can't buy in the United States. They're beyond Tesla. They're going to see, they're going to come back and they're going to say, I want one of those. And the reason is because during COVID, what happened is we put all our money, $10 trillion plus, in debt. And that was for good reason, to help our people. But what China did, and China can do this as an authoritarian state, they invested. They didn't give, they invested. And what I saw in China are not just seas of cars, but I visited these advanced cities now that have been uplifted in the last 5 years. Major construction that's occurring. Here's a good example. This is China's Pittsburgh, so to speak. And in 2015, when I was last there, it looks like Pittsburgh. Now, this is like a version of, Wuhan calls it their Optics Valley after Silicon Valley. These are advanced AI-driven laser.
Would you look at this? Do you see this? This is what they were able to accomplish in a decade. And guess what it did to the economy in that city? raised millions of people out of poverty. Imagine if that type of investment was being made in Appalachia. Imagine if that type of investment in infrastructure and growing, these other former industrial bastions. What if that money was? What if that money we're spending on this freaking war? Money that they're spending on foolishness, all the billions of dollars that's being pumped into AI. What if those investments were being made in Detroit? The coal miner would have a new skill. That's what they promised us. The car manufacturers who are being replaced by robots would have another skill. They would be building cities to keep us, folks.
Robotics that are just uplifting the entire city of 10 million people, because it's not just about building a company. They're integrating all this citywide, so there's massive construction going on. This is another good example. I was in Hangzhou in 1979. I was part of the trip I was on, and it was a fishing village. Today, look at this. This is a completely different Hangzhou. There's still some fishing there, by the way, but what you see is this has been uplifted as a city. Just imagine if that was St. Louis. Imagine if this is Shenzhen. Here's another example of what was a fishing village just a couple hours outside of Hong Kong on the Chinese side of the border. Also, I was there in 1979. Now, this is an industry leader. This is where BYD is. But notice the city. It's not just electric manufacturing, electric vehicle manufacturing. Look at the entire city of 10 million people. Brand spanking new airports. This is what we're missing. China, it's not that China's catching up to America, it's that we now need to catch up to China. And it's not about inventing a single product. You see, I think we think that, as long as we have the latest single widget, we are ahead. What China's doing is inventing new widgets and then diffusing them massively across whole sectors and regions. They've uplifted about 50 to 100 million people in the last 6 years. What have we done for our Rust Belt? What have we really done for Erie, Pennsylvania, where I was born? Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Detroit, Baltimore. Almost exactly the same, and in many ways worse than they did 6 years ago. What is China?
So this is what I'm saying, folks. We have to make sure that as we are putting Democrats back into power, as we are making sure that we, put this diabolical regime to rest, that we have a mandate going into the midterms, because we don't want to elect Democrats that's going to turn into a Fetterman, bruh. We don't want that. We don't want a Fetterman who, by the way, just was the one vote needed to continue the war. He voted today to continue the war in Iran. Had he not voted for that, the war would have had enough Republicans who crossed over to be ended. That was Fetterman, folks. Anyway, but we need to send Democrats into power with a mandate, housing affordability, minimum wage, food insecurity, the things that we are caring about. We have to send them there with a mandate, because if we don't, we run the risk of having them with the power and having our circumstances just as they were. So infrastructure, the Biden administration did pass an infrastructure bill. But again, when we talk about, performative measures, performative legislation, it lands like that. You know why? Because a lot of the infrastructure programs that were passed under the Biden administration never were able to come to fruition because of all sorts of red tape and, environmental surveys and woo, all the things. So that's another thing. We have to make sure that they're not creating roadblocks through over-regulation to keep these initiatives from moving at an accelerated pace. There are ways to create efficiency. Madami just showed us in New York. He took a process that would have normally taken 7 months and made it 90 days just by removing red tape. You go look it up. So there are ways to meet the needs of the American people and also make sure, we're not killing the planet, but that don't take 5 years. We have Democrats with a clear mandate, and one of those mandates should be infrastructure. They're focusing on infrastructure can really do wonders for elevating those of us who are below the poverty line, those of us who have been displaced due to outsourcing. You know what I mean? Trump is blaming China, but it's not China's fault. Nobody made American companies decide that they rather outsource labor than to pay Americans the higher wages that unions fought for. That's the betrayal by the American companies. Let's be clear. So we have to make sure there's policies in place that decentivize that. No, you're not allowed. If you're an American company, you cannot outsource to China. Absolutely. If you outsource, you're out of business. If you can't, or maybe it's a ratio involved. I don't know what the solution should be, but it can't be that American companies are allowed to outsource to foreign countries and pay their people slave wages, all because they don't want to pay Americans what they should be paid for the labor that they're outputting. So we have to make sure that our politicians create legislation around that. And if we invest in infrastructure the way China has done, I don't think that we wouldn't see so many people living in poverty in the United States. That will do a lot to solve the housing crisis and people who are unhoused or homeless. We got to send Democrats in there with a mandate. If we don't send them with a mandate, we're going to be in the same position after they gain power. So I don't want y'all just reacting to what Trump is doing. We need to be clear-eyed about what our demands are for Democrats as we bring them back into power. All right, I'm done talking.